Part 31. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 301. Chapter 301 Jealousy of Spiritual Pets. That little thing in the cloud looks like it has no fighting ability, but it is very fast. From what she said, it is very good at hunting for treasures. After all, Spring City has existed for such a long time, and no one has found the treasure that allows the hot spring to purify spiritual roots. Xuanhuan discovered it as soon as he came and took it back with his own skills. It seems that she must have obtained the treasure naturally formed between heaven and earth before. Suddenly something flashed in her mind. Was she the one who took away the wood spirit? Thinking about it now, the weird young man I saw at the beginning always feels familiar. Compared with the young man dressed in front of me, Xianxia, they are not very similar. That young man should be her. Xuanhuan realized at this moment that the little girl he had put in his heart seemed unusual. Your spiritual pet, can't you control it? Xuanhuan had a plan in his mind. He had been worried about her. Now it seemed that even if she left him, this girl would live well. Xianxia said a little worriedly, "It's not that I can't control it, it's that I don't want to let it down." Jiju was heartbroken and unwilling to let him down. What kind of favor is this? Is she so kind to a spiritual pet? Your spiritual pet is so happy, Xuanhuan said with emotion. If only she would pamper him like this, then he would be the happiest man in the world. Xuanhuan never imagined that one day he would be envious of a spiritual pet and compete with a spiritual pet for favor. Of course I have to pamper my spiritual pets. They are the beings that I can trust with my life. Anyone in this world may abandon me, but they will not, Xianxia said without hesitation. She did think so in her heart. Even if they were loyal to her because of the contractual relationship, it was still a kind of loyalty. It is an existence that she does not have to doubt. Such an existence is too precious to her. Although her two spiritual pets are not considered battle pets, they are of great help to her and they still will not abandon her companions. You can trust me like this, Xuanhuan said seriously. From her words, it could be heard that the little girl started to make a living on her own at the age of 10. In fact, it still left a shadow in her heart. She was very afraid of being abandoned. Xianxia paused and looked at him, just in time to see the seriousness and tenderness in his eyes. She looked away. Really? Xuanhuan heard these two words and knew that if he wanted her to trust him like this, he still needed to work hard and work hard. Do you trust me so much? Xianxia suddenly asked. Xuanhuan didn't expect that she would ask back, and smiled. I have trusted you so long ago, since the first time you healed me. Xianxia's heart beat inexplicably very fast. Did he start the first treatment? That was considered the first time. Did that cave help him suppress the poison when he first met, or did the immortal cloud sect start to help him heal? How could she not know that he trusted her so much? To be honest, at that time I felt that the relationship between the two was that of doctor and patient, a mutually beneficial relationship. That's because only I can heal you, and that kind of trust is different from the trust you mentioned. Xianxia lowered her eyelids. Xuanhuan shook his head and said, I thought it was like this before, but now I know that it's not because you are the only one who can heal me. I have had a feeling since the first time you came out of the royal training ground. I want to believe you, but I don't know why. Xianxia was stunned. Xuanhuan was such a proud person. He would not lie to make himself happy just because he liked himself, so what he said was his true feelings. She was not overjoyed by his words, but thought that the first time she formally met him was when her soul came out of the Tianshan Empire's royal training ground after her soul returned. That was also the time when she was most embarrassed. After all, it was he managed to save his life from a life and death situation, but was blatantly insulted and killed because she was Xuanhuan's fiancée. But she didn't seem to hate Xuanhuan because of it. She just wanted to break off the engagement with him, leave the imperial city, and go the way she wanted to go. Although she thought she was reborn and not the original owner at that time, after reading the letters left by her parents, she knew that she was still herself no matter what world she was in. So now that she thinks about it, it doesn't seem right. It would be wrong to replace it with anyone. Girls, in that situation, they would hate Ji Kong to death, right? Not only did she not hate him, on the contrary, after breaking off the engagement, she saved him several times when she met him, and even later helped him cure his fetal poison. It seems that I have never been reluctant to get along with him. In fact, when they first met, she was a little afraid of Ji Hong. After all, in that situation, his cultivation pressure was beyond the reach of her who had just reached the third level of UN level. When did this feeling of fear disappear and you trust him so much? To put it into detail, in the past 3 years, they have met only a handful of times, only a few times in total. If they hadn't met later in the residence of the 9 families and experienced so much together, it would be okay to say that each other is just a little better than strangers. However, she seemed to know Ji Hong very well, which was an extremely contradictory feeling. Jian is a Xuanhuan technique that can only be learned by the Ji family. But when you said you wanted a Xuanhuan technique, I took out Jian and gave it to you without even thinking about it. I don't even know why I was like that. Do it, Ji Hong said again. Yan Xiangloo took a deep breath. I seem to trust you easily. Even though you suffered so many insults and almost died, I never hated you. It doesn't seem normal. Ji Hong's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had always cared about what happened to her when she was his fiancée, and was worried that she would hate him because of it. But now that he heard her say that she didn't hate him, he felt relieved. Perhaps this is the fate between us. Ji Hong's tone became much more relaxed. Yan Xiangloo frowned and shook her head. Something's wrong. There must be some reason that we don't know. Ji Kong's eyes dimmed. She didn't think this was their fate? Before he could say anything else, Yan Xiangloo said, the topic has gone far away. Let's get back to the topic. The direction you chose is not the direction of the battlefield, right? Ji Hong lowered his eyes to calm down his mood and advised himself that emotional matters cannot be solved overnight, so take your time and don't rush. No, but with Yun Tuan's ability, even if it's not in that direction, as long as it enters the mountains, if there is any genius treasure, it can sense it. Ji Hong understood what she meant. She wanted to avoid that direction. She didn't want to go to a place where more than 300 god-level cultivators were killed all at once, and she didn't want Yun Tuan to provoke that life-threatening treasure. But he still reminded her that her spiritual pet's ability was not to detect the existence of the baby unless it went in that direction. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 302. Chapter 302 Strange Phenomenon. Yan Xiangloo naturally understood that with Yun Tuan's ability, as long as he entered the Death Mountain, he would definitely be able to sense the treasure. If there really was a treasure that caught his eye, it would be impossible not to get it. Let's go and see, Yan Xiangloo said helplessly. It may not be a treasure that Yun Tuan can see. What kind of spiritual beast is the cloud? Ji Hong has always been curious about what kind of spiritual beast Yun Tuan is. He looked through the spiritual beast and war beast records and couldn't find any spiritual beasts or war beasts like it. Because of its treasure hunting skills, he had previously suspected that it was a 1000 machine mouse, but after checking the spirit animal records, he found that although Yun Tuan and the 1000 machine mouse were similar in size, they were different in color and had very different living habits. 1000 machine mouse likes to live underground. The cloud loves to be clean, even if it can dig out underground treasures, but it does not like to live in the dark underground. No matter what time, the fur remains as spotless as the clouds in the sky. No wonder the little girl named it Yun Tuan. I don't know. Yun Tuan said it is a mythical beast. I only know that it is a mythical beast, but I don't know what kind of mythical beast it is. I don't know much about mythical beasts. I can only know what it is when it takes the form of its original form, when it has the power of a mythical beast again. A mythical beast. Xianxia didn't hide the fact that Xuanhuan was a mythical beast. Actually, she didn't really believe that Xuanhuan was a divine beast at the time, but now she somewhat believes it. Ordinary spiritual beasts don't have the ability of Xuanhuan. The lower continent's understanding of divine beasts is limited, and Zhizhong doesn't know much either. If we have the opportunity to learn about the records of divine beasts in the higher continents, we should be able to deduce what kind of divine beast Xuanhuan is. Zhizhong comforted Xianxia. He was telling the truth. As long as there were records, he could deduce what kind of mythical beast the cloud was. Master, there is a purple Scrofulariaceae in front of me. It is 3,000 years old. Do you want it? A voice that covered the sky suddenly came. Yes, Xianxia blurted out, rather than communicating with his mind. Zhizhong was stunned. What do you want? Xianxia said sheepishly. Jishan found a 3,000-year-old purple Scrofulariaceae and asked me if I wanted it. Zhizhong's mouth twitched. He asked her if she wanted a 3,000-year-old purple Scrofulariaceae. Isn't it necessary? How extravagant is she? Could it be that all her medicinal materials are tens of thousands of years old, and she has to consider whether to use those that are thousands of years old? Although I thought so in my heart, I said, "Where is it? I will help you dig it out." Xianxia pointed to the front and said, "In front, we can cover the sky and collect it without our hands." The two followed Jishan to a place. Zhizhong saw a plant standing upright in the middle of a circle of weeds and various wild plants that had fallen down on their own. It looked like it should be the purple Scrofulariaceae that Jishan mentioned. Looking at Zhetian diligently digging up purple Scrofulariaceae with vines, the corner of his mouth twitched again. This was the first time he had seen this method of collecting herbs. Although none of this girl's spiritual pets are war pets, they have to admit that they are both experts at treasure hunting. One specializes in finding unique treasures in the world, and the other specializes in finding various rare medicinal materials. Looking at it this way, it is more suitable for her than having a battle pet. Zhizhong, who originally wanted to help, could only stand aside with Xianxia, watching Zhetian dig out the purple Scrofulariaceae and hand it to Xianxia, who put it away casually. There is actually soil at the roots of the medicinal materials. Is this how she picks all the medicinal materials? Zhizhong was sure that this girl probably had a lot of medicinal materials. Jishan was contracted by her in Wanghai Forest, and she probably had a lot of old medicinal materials in Wanghai Forest. Next, Zhetian clears the way while looking for medicinal materials. Zhizhong discovers that the medicinal materials they collected are all thousands of years old, not hundreds of years old. It's not that there are no medicinal materials that are hundreds of years old here, but Zhetian doesn't like them. Well, my two pets are very special. One only sees the unique treasures in the world, and the other only sees medicinal materials that are over 1,000 years old. However, along the way, he got to know a lot of medicinal materials, many of which were rare varieties. The further you go, the higher the level of the medicinal materials. Later, you even dug up medicinal materials that were tens of thousands of years old. However, the strange thing is that you didn't encounter any monsters or spiritual beasts. Let alone encounter them, you didn't feel their aura. Looking at the sky, it was getting dark. It was evening. Xianxia said, "Why is there not a single monster or spiritual beast here?" Zhizhong had discovered this strange phenomenon a long time ago. Even if the level of the monsters and spiritual beasts was not high, they should be able to sense their aura if they avoided them. Why, after walking for a day, there was not a single monster or spirit beast encountered. Let's find a place to rest and let Zhetian check the surrounding situation. Zhizhong didn't know the reason, but he was sure that something must have happened in the Death Mountain. After all, the historical records did not say that there were no monsters and spiritual beasts in the Death Mountains. On the contrary, because no one comes to the Death Mountain, there are quite a lot of materials inside, and spiritual beasts and monsters can live quite comfortably. Unless there are some beast-taming families that specialize in capturing monsters and spiritual beasts, they are almost in no danger. Therefore, there are quite a lot of monsters and spirit beasts. What's more, when he came in, he clearly noticed the aura of spirit beasts. The mountains in this direction are undulating, which is suitable for the life of flying spirit beasts. Why did the aura of spirit beasts and monster beasts become less and less after he came in, so that he can't detect it now, and even more so? Don't talk about meeting. They found a small open space on a hillside and decided to rest here for a while. Xianxia asked Xianxia to investigate the situation in the Death Forest. You set up the formation and I'll take out the treasure and see what it is. Xianxia sat down on the cushion made of weeds that Xianxia had given her when she left. Xuanhuan thought of Jishan and didn't even bother to talk to Xianxia before leaving. He neatly woven 2 cushions out of weeds. It would be more accurate to use instructions, because Jishan used pressure to make the weeds weave themselves into cushions. Although this skill is usually a bit useless, at this time it seems a bit warm and practical. At least they don't have to sit directly on the ground, which is very comfortable. Xuanhuan sat down without delaying his formation. He raised his hand and threw a few spirit stones to fall around the 2 of them. A breath rose from around the 2 of them, enveloping them in the formation. Xianxia's attainments in the formation were not low, otherwise she would not have broken the gentleman's formation. Therefore, she could clearly see the process of Xuanhuan's formation and the strength of the formation. Set up a trap to prevent the baby from going back to the ground again. Han secretly admired him. Xuanhuan's formation skills were definitely above his own. This is also the reason why she did not set up the formation but asked Xuanhuan to set up the formation. She just wanted to see how advanced his formation skills were. You can take it out now, Xuanhuan said to Xianxia. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 303. Chapter 303 Not Like a Baby. Xianxia first communicated with Xuanhuan. After all, Xuanhuan found the baby and took it back together with Xianxia. Xuanhuan knew very well that he could not tame the baby. Only if the baby belonged to the owner could he use it as he wished. As soon as Xianxia said it, he immediately agreed, and Xianxia took out the turtle shell. As soon as the turtle shell left the space, a soft ball inside quickly held up the turtle shell and tried to escape. The speed was indeed very fast. Unfortunately, the level of Xuanhuan's trap formation was too high. It was like a reinforced iron barrel. The faster the speed is, the more powerful it will be when it hits the power of the formation. With a bang, the turtle shell was hit by the force on the other side of the formation, and then knocked back. Just because the trapping formation was too small, the turtle shell was knocked around. Xianxia and Xuanhuan avoided the collision with the turtle shell. Arrive. Until all the power was removed, the turtle shell fell to the ground, and it still wanted to burrow underground. Unfortunately, there were traps on the surface and it couldn't burrow in at all. The turtle shell jumped up and down, but failed to escape. Instead, it flipped over and landed on its back, swinging and spinning like a top. It took a while before it completely stopped and became motionless. Xianxia glanced at Xuanhuan, who touched his nose and said, "I miscalculated. I didn't expect it to run away so hard. Fortunately, the turtle shell is a black turtle shell, otherwise it would have been smashed." After hearing his words, the turtle shell moved for a moment and then stopped moving. Those who didn't know it thought it was just a turtle shell. Xianxia stretched out a finger to flick the turtle shell and turned it over. What kind of thing is it? It actually pretends to be dead. Because she had used her spiritual sense to examine it before and found that the thing inside was soft. Now she was not sure what the soft thing was, and she did not dare to reach out and touch it. Xuanhuan directly picked up the turtle shell, lifted it up and looked inside. There was a whirring thing inside, which seemed to be transparent. Xuanhuan was stunned for a moment. What is this? He thought that the treasure that could make the hot spring water have the effect of cleansing the spiritual roots should be like the 5 elements bead, something tall and full of aura at first sight. Or some kind of genius with spiritual knowledge. What he saw in front of him was very different from what he imagined. Xianxia asked curiously, what does the thing inside look like? Xuanhuan shook the turtle shell and felt the contents inside sloshing around like liquid. He couldn't tell what it was. It looks like it's transparent, and it sways when you shake it, as if it's all liquid inside. Xianxia said, I used my spiritual sense to check it before. It felt soft, and I didn't feel that there was strong spiritual energy inside. It didn't look like a treasure that could make the hot spring water have the effect of washing spiritual roots. But with Yun Tuanqi Bao's ability is not a natural treasure, it will never look down on it, let alone take it back. Xuanhuan did not doubt Yun Tuan's ability and threw the turtle shell on the ground. The thing inside should be able to hide its aura, otherwise it would not have been found for so long. The black turtle shell is very strong. What should I do if it hides inside and can't come out? Xianxia kicked the black turtle shell with her foot. The black turtle shell turned over, but the things inside were still huddled inside and motionless. Xuanhuan sneered, although the black turtle shell is very strong, it is not invulnerable. Do you have a way to crack open the black turtle shell? Xianxia immediately understood what he meant and immediately cooperated with him. Xuanhuan smiled, you are a smart girl. Your gentleman's sword can break the black turtle's shell. Although Xuanhuan's voice was gentle, it was for Xianxia. Hearing the sound, the thing in the turtle shell suddenly shivered, and the turtle shell trembled. Xianxia blinked, and with a thought, the Junzi sword appeared in her hand. Although using the Junzi sword to split the black turtle shell is a bit overkill, I am very curious about what the things inside look like, so I will give the Junzi sword a try. However, my strength is not accurate, so there is no guarantee that the sword will only split the turtle shell. The implication is that the sword may break the contents inside. As soon as she finished speaking, black turtle shell ran aside, apparently intending to hide. The gentleman's sword in Xianxia's hand danced with a beautiful sword flower. The trap is so big, where can you hide? Xuanhuan froze for a moment, then ran back, came to Xianxia's feet, and rubbed her feet, as if he was trying to please her. Xianxia pretended not to know and asked, what is it doing, scratching its itch? Xuanhuan was almost amused by her words. What was going on in her little mind? Even if she wanted to tease it, she didn't have to be so funny. But in order to stir up the things inside, he still suppressed a smile and cooperated with her. The black turtle shell is not a part of its body. Even if the turtle shell is itchy, it can't feel it. It should be trying to please you. Xianxia kicked it away in disgust and knocked the turtle shell with a gentleman's sword. I don't know how long this turtle shell has been buried under the ground. It's too dirty. The black turtle shell that was struck by the Junzi sword immediately did not dare to move. The powerful pressure of the Junzi sword could clearly sense what was inside, although Xianxia had not yet injected spiritual power into it. Xuanhuan glanced at the black turtle shell and said, that's right, just use the gentleman's sword to split it. If the thing inside is also smashed, it will be considered unlucky. That's right. Anyway, I don't lack it as a treasure. I'm just curious about what the thing inside looks like. It doesn't matter whether it's life or death, so give it a try. I'll try to control the strength. Xianxia raised the gentleman's sword and used his spiritual power to input. The gentleman's sword went into it, and in an instant, the aura of the gentleman's sword became stronger. Just when she was about to chop it down, a soft and almost transparent ball came out of it and jumped onto Xianxia's lap. The meaning was obvious: I'm out, you can watch it if you want. Don't break my black turtle shell house, let alone break me into pieces. Xianxia withdrew her spiritual power but put away the Junzi sword. She looked at the unknown object bouncing softly on her lap with undisguised disgust in her eyes. What is this? Xuanhuan's movements froze, and he continued to jump in mid-air. It was obvious that Xianxia disliked him. Before Xianxia and Zhizhong could say anything, the soft dumpling fell onto Xianxia's leg with a clatter, and collapsed into a round cake, as if he was in pain. A smile flashed across Xianxia's eyes. This little thing is quite fun, and it can change its shape at will. Stretch out to pinch it, and the round cake suddenly becomes like a drop of water, drooping. It doesn't look like a treasure at all. Xianxia held the drop-like treasure and shook it. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 304. Chapter 304. Its origin. The water droplet suddenly expanded and turned into the soft ball shape before, and then released spiritual energy, as if because of what Xianxia said, it was proving something. Zhizhong immediately shouted, "Stop and continue to hide your abilities." Xuanhuan did not stop releasing spiritual energy. Zhizhong immediately understood its meaning and winked at Xianxia. Xianxia also understood and said quickly, "I believe you are a treasure, don't release your power anymore." Soft dumplings continued to release spiritual energy. Zhizhong's eyes changed. If this continues, it will cause unnecessary trouble. He said decisively, "Since it is so disobedient, let's chop it into pieces with a gentleman's sword." This sentence really worked, and the soft dumpling immediately stopped releasing spiritual energy. Zhizhong and Xianxia looked at each other. They were soft dumplings with a temper. However, the two of them did not dwell on the matter and immediately began to absorb the spiritual energy released by the soft dumpling. This spiritual energy is much richer than soaking in a hot spring. After entering the body, it goes directly to the dantian. The spiritual root tree is swaying with nourishment. Although the spiritual root tree cannot speak, it can be seen from its performance that it likes this spiritual energy. The nourishing effect of hot spring water is much better than before. Xianxia visibly found that her spiritual root tree was becoming clearer and clearer. It took a while for the two of them to absorb the spiritual energy released by the soft dumpling. They looked at each other and let out a sigh of relief, expressing the same idea. It was too dangerous. Fortunately, there was a trapping formation, so the spiritual energy did not leak out. Fortunately, they stopped Soft Xuanzi from releasing his spiritual energy in time, and the two of them tacitly absorbed the released spiritual energy. Otherwise, if such an obvious aura is discovered, people will definitely know that there is a treasure like the treasure in Quan City, and the Lord of Quan City will definitely know that the lost treasure is in the Death Mountain, and they who have just entered the Death Mountain will become suspect. Although they can continue to change their faces, they can't guarantee whether the other party has any treasures that can track them down. Xianxia glanced at Zhizhong and then at the soft dumpling, asking with his eyes, "What should I do with this thing?" Zhizhong's phoenix eyes flashed over and thought deeply. Although they knew that this soft dumpling was a treasure, they didn't know what it was specifically, let alone how to deal with it. Suddenly her eyes twitched. This thing was obviously spiritual. In other words, it could be regarded as a living thing. The storage ring could not hold any living thing. Where did she put the soft dumpling before? The spiritual pet space cannot accommodate living creatures other than the spiritual pets you have contracted with. Thinking again that the medicinal materials Zetian had picked for her before were all made of soil, something suddenly occurred to her. Could it be that this girl had a portable space, the kind of space that was said to be just like a small world that was planted to accommodate living creatures? This is her secret? Jija Kong was extremely shocked, but it didn't show on his face at all. Try to see if you can contract it, Jija Hong suggested. Even if she has such a heaven-defying portable space, it is safe to contract a treasure like this to truly become her own. As soon as he heard about the contract, Ruan Tuanzi immediately jumped off Yan Xiangluo's lap, obviously not wanting to be contracted. Yan Xiangluo knew that Jija Hong was right, and contracting with Ruan Tuanzi was the best solution. Therefore, he pointed the gentleman's sword in his hand at it and said, "I'll give you two choices. 1. Make a contract with me and I will protect you from now on. 2. I will use the gentleman's sword to destroy you and save you from falling into the trap of someone with bad character in the hands of others. What will they do with you?" The soft dumplings suddenly became soft cakes again. There's no point in pretending to be a bear. Make your choice quickly. I don't have time to waste with you. Yan Xiangluo tapped the black turtle shell with the gentleman's sword. The soft cake stood up stunned and slowly walked towards Yan Xiangluo, looking like he was forced to give in but was unwilling to die. Walking to Yan Xiangluo, the soft dumpling jumped onto her lap and remained motionless, meaning you should contract with me. Yan Xiangluo did not give it a chance to regret. A drop of blood fell on the soft dumpling. The bright red blood beads formed a sharp contrast with the transparent soft dumpling. It rolled around on the soft dumpling but could not be integrated. Jija Hong said coldly, "Since it doesn't want to be contracted, don't waste time and deal with it quickly." As soon as Jija Hong finished speaking, the drop of blood rolling around on Ruan Duanzi immediately melted into Ruan Duanzi's body. Yan Xiangluo twitched the corner of his mouth. "Why did you come here? You are a tough guy but not soft. Are you smart or stupid? No matter what, the contract can proceed anyway." A red light enveloped Yan Xiangluo and Ruan Tuanzi, and the master-servant contract was established. There is an additional connection in Yan Xiangluo's consciousness, and it is Ruan Tuanzi's. Yan Xiangluo used her spiritual consciousness to communicate with Ruan Tuanzi. "What are you, baby?" Yan Xiangluo wanted to ask what it was, but thinking that it was now hers, it was a bit hurtful to ask. She had already said the word, so she changed her words to the word treasure. "Master, I am the powerful spiritual root of an ancient person who almost gained eternal life." Yan Xiangluo was shocked. Did she really not expect that Ruan Tuanzi was actually a spiritual root that had reached the pinnacle of cultivation? Can the spiritual root still leave the human body and live freely? She listened to Ruan Tuanzi's origin story with mixed emotions. Yan Xiangluo also knew how Ruan Tuanzi became what it is now. Although the great master had reached the highest level of cultivation, he did not really break through the last level until his life was about to expire. One of his disciples wanted to dig out his spiritual roots and nourish his own spiritual roots, thinking that this way he might have a better chance of winning when he breaks through the final level in the future. So a trap was set up to plot against Da Neng. Da Neng did not expect that his most proud disciple would actually do such a thing to him. He hated him extremely, but he could not prevent his spiritual roots from being dug out. He used his last cultivation to wrap the spiritual root that was about to be dug out with his spiritual consciousness and threw it down from the 9 heavens, landing in the 3,000 small worlds. Since the spiritual root is destined to be dug out, he will not let the rebels get it. This spiritual root is just a soft dumpling. The soft dumpling who fell into the 3,000 small worlds has developed spiritual consciousness after a long time. However, because his body is spiritual root, apart from having stronger spiritual energy that can nourish people's spiritual roots, his only other ability is to be fast. But the ability of soft Tuanzi is useless in front of strong humans. It is very smart and always hides its aura in sparsely populated places. After meeting the black turtle shell, a sturdy and durable house. It used the black turtle shell as a place to live and hid in it. It hid itself deep underground and hid its breath. On the one hand, you can ensure your own safety, and on the other hand, you can continue to practice. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 305. Chapter 305. Give it to him first. It hopes that it can develop strong strength to protect itself, but over such a long period of time, it has only cultivated the shape of its body's spiritual roots into its current soft dumpling shape, which can change its shape at will. The place where it lives is Xuanhuan. There are many hot springs here. Although it hides its own breath, its existence has a strong effect. Therefore, the hot springs in Xuanhuan have the effect of nourishing people's spiritual roots. Successive lords of Spring City have tried their best to find the treasure that allows the hot spring water to nourish spiritual roots. However, they have only determined the location of the treasure, but cannot find out what it is. Therefore, the city lord's palace was built where the treasure was located, and formations and barriers were also set up to prevent the treasure from falling into the hands of others. It can be seen how strong Xuanhuan's hiding ability is. If he hadn't met Xuanhuan, a unique little treasure hunter in the world, I'm afraid he would have continued to practice under Xuanhuan. If Xuanhuan and Zetian hadn't gone together, even if Xuanhuan wanted to leave, he wouldn't have been able to leave the area of the city lord's mansion. Since they don't know what you look like, how do they know you're missing? Xianxia asked. Xuanhuan said in a grown-up tone, they put a spirit gathering tower where I am. As long as I am there, the spirit gathering tower will always shine brightly. I will emit more spiritual energy there than other places. I will if you leave, the light of Juling Tower will be extinguished. Yanxiangluo's eyes lit up. Juling Pagoda, is there such a treasure? Will the aura on your body be absorbed by the light? Yanxiangluo asked. Since the soft dumpling has the effect of nourishing and purifying spiritual roots, she has truly experienced the benefits. It is impossible not to use it, but since it is already her own treasure, she must take good care of it. First, ask if its spiritual energy is taken from it. It's inexhaustible. If it wasn't, she would hold it back so as not to hurt the soft dumpling. It's just that the spiritual energy that nourishes the spiritual roots will not be absorbed. Although I hide my aura every day, the spiritual energy is still leaking out. I can't control it. Otherwise, the hot springs in Xuan City will not have the effect of nourishing the spiritual roots. Master, don't worry and absorb it. When this matter was mentioned, the soft dumpling immediately became energetic. This is what it is best at. Moreover, my spiritual energy not only nourishes the spiritual roots, but also has a purifying effect. The higher the purity of the spiritual roots and the higher the talent, the less likely it is that my practice will encounter obstacles. The reason why I have this ability is because the technique that the great master practiced at the beginning had the effect of purifying the spiritual roots. He was able to practice to the highest level of cultivation, and it was also thanks to this technique that the spiritual roots were purified very pure, but his technique was not as good as it. My ability to purify spiritual roots is strong now. Master, as long as I purify my spiritual roots into the transparent state I am now, I will ensure that my talent is unparalleled in the world. Such is the skill of soft dumpling. Naturally, it has to explain its use clearly to make its owner feel that it is of great use. It has not forgotten how much its owner disliked it before. Yanxiangluo's eyes lit up, and she handed the soft dumpling to Jizhong, holding it, absorbing its spiritual energy, and purifying the spiritual root into a soft dumpling with such transparency. Your talent will be at its best. The soft dumpling belongs to her, and she can absorb its spiritual energy to purify her spiritual roots at any time, but Jizhong is different, he is not its master. Jizhong has worked hard along the way, and she has to accept his love. Whether he is so good to her because he likes her, or for other reasons, She doesn't want to just ask for it. Xuanhuan didn't know about the conversation between her and Ruan Tuanzi, but through the hot springs he also knew that Ruajuanzi's spiritual power was more powerful. To his surprise, Yanxiangluo actually let him absorb the spiritual energy first. Yanxiangluo briefly told Xuanhuan the origin of soft dumplings and their functions. Xuanhuan knew about the existence of Ruan Tuanzi from beginning to end. He also knew the function of its spiritual energy, and he did not try to steal it from him. He even let himself contract Ruan Tuanzi, which showed that he at least did not want to take Ruan Tuanzi as his own. Then, it is my own intention to let him absorb the spiritual energy first. Xuanhuan did not refuse. He held the soft dumpling in his hand and began to absorb its spiritual energy. Although Ruan Tuanzi is dissatisfied that he is not his master and wants to absorb his own spiritual energy, since it is his master's order, he naturally has to obey his master's words. Besides, this man is ruthless. He asked his master to chop him with a gentleman's sword when he disagreed. However, his master still listened to him. He should be more honest. Anyway, there is a lot of spiritual energy, and he can't absorb it all. Hence, Soft Tuanzi cooperated very well in releasing spiritual energy for Xuanhuan to absorb. The amount of spiritual energy released happened to be the maximum amount that Xuanhuan could absorb. Xuanhuan glanced at the soft dumpling in his hand. This thing should be the reason for the powerful spiritual roots. Although it did not have its own spiritual consciousness at that time, it instinctively remembered some, so it had its own spiritual consciousness. After consciousness, they are much smarter than ordinary spiritual beings that have spiritual consciousness. It can be said that it is the most aware of current affairs. He has never heard that a person's spiritual roots can survive without the human body. Not only can they survive, but they can also give birth to spiritual consciousness and become an independent existence. Maybe it is the only special case in the world. After all, no one will dig out the spiritual root after death and protect it with all their consciousness and strength. There are only two ways for people to die, one is prepared and the other is accidental. Most of those who are prepared will have their lifespan exhausted. At that time, the spiritual roots are almost in their most fragile state, and even if they are dug out, they will have no effect. Those who die unexpectedly do not have the opportunity to dig out their spiritual roots and cultivate them separately. That's why we say that soft dumplings are the only special case in the world. The most important thing about the soft dough being able to become an independent existence is related to the powerful cultivation method of its body owner. If the exercises practiced by that powerful person did not have the effect of purifying the spiritual roots, it would not be purified to the best state. Without purified spiritual roots, it would be impossible to survive after leaving the human body. Xuanhuan began to absorb the power of Ruan Tuanzi to practice, and Yanxiangluo was not idle either. She took out the historical records given to them by the fat old man and started reading them. Neither she nor Xuanhuan had time to read this historical record. Now she would take advantage of this time to read it first. Combining the information bought from unknown sources and looking at historical records, one can get a general idea of the lives of the upper-class people in the higher continent. It was getting darker and darker, and I could no longer see the words clearly. I glanced at Xuanhuan and saw that he was still absorbing spiritual energy. Yanxiangluo took out an illuminating bead and continued to read. One night passed, and Yanxiangluo finished reading the historical records, but it was already dawn. Why hadn't Zhetian come back? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 306. Chapter 306 Special Skills. Yanxiangluo looked around. It was quiet. Xuanhuan was still absorbing spiritual energy. One night passed, and the two of them were not disturbed at all. It really doesn't even have a monster or a spiritual beast. Yan Xianglue was a little worried about Zetian. Why did she not come back after going to investigate all night? Although it can mix well in Wanghai Forest, it doesn't mean it can also mix well in the Death Mountains where it is the first time. Even if she could sense it if it was dangerous, she wouldn't worry. She immediately used her spiritual consciousness to contact Jishan. Jishan, where are you? Why didn't you come back all night? Master, I'll be there soon. A voice that covered the sky came. As soon as Yan Xianglue heard about Zetian, she came back immediately. She felt relieved and did not continue to ask about it. Within a moment, Jishan arrived at their location. To them, the trap set up by Jizhong seemed to not exist, and they came in without any hindrance. Only then did Yan Xianglue realize that although his two spiritual pets had little fighting power, they seemed to have some special abilities. For example, all formations and barriers seemed useless to them. We talked about the soft dumpling yesterday. There were both formation and barrier obstacles where it was located. Didn't they also get the soft dumpling back? Obviously, neither the formation nor the barrier was useful to them. Sensing that the trap formation had been touched, Jizhong suddenly opened his eyes and saw Zetian returning. It understands formations. Jizhong wanted to ask this question last night when he heard Yan Xianglue say that there were formations and barriers where Ruan Tuanzi was. Boundaries are in existence that they are currently out of touch with. Only those who have reached the level can have the ability to create barriers. However, Yuntuan and Zetian actually found the soft dumplings from the double protection of the formation and brought them out, which shows that they can come and go freely in the formation. Now that he has seen with his own eyes that Zetian can come and go freely in the formation he set up, he is even more sure of this matter. Yan Xianglue shook his head and said, I also just realized that formations and barriers are useless to them. I don't know if they have their own abilities or if they learn them later. After listening to the conversation between the two, Jishan immediately communicated with Yan Xianglue's consciousness. Master, barriers and formations have no effect on divine beasts and divine plants. Yan Xianglue heard this and asked curiously, does it have no effect on all divine beasts and divine plants? Jishan nodded, as long as we become divine beasts, divine plant barriers and formations will have no effect on us, unless it is the superpower to gain eternal life. This time Yan Xianglue really believed that Yuntuan was a mythical beast. She explained it to Jizhong. Jizhong raised his eyebrows and thought about his spiritual beast Wuji. He wondered if Wuji could become a divine beast one day. I'll first listen to Zetian tell me about what he found. Yan Xianglue thought that Zetian had been there all night and didn't know what he had found. Jijudian nodded and handed the soft dumpling in his hand to Yan Xianglue, asking her to put it away first and absorb it when he had time. Yan Xianglue threw the soft dumpling into Pangu space, and did not forget to throw its house into it. As soon as soft dumpling entered the space, it was different from before. When it came in before, this was someone else's territory, so it could only squint. Now it's its owner's territory. Can it be the same? The excited and curious Ruan Tuanzi was about to travel around the Pangu space when he noticed the gaze that penetrated into his consciousness yesterday. Looking along the feeling, I saw Yuntuan stretching out his little claws to kick the black turtle shell aside and staring at it. Seeing Yuntuan's wolf-like eyes, Ruan Tuanzi shivered and moved aside. It was this guy who dug him out of the ground, and the vine just caught him, so he couldn't run away even if he wanted to. Can't run. After living for so long, it feels so helpless for the first time. But it was because of the two of them that I was able to leave the place where I had been trapped for who knows how long. I recognized the owner, and I didn't know whether my decision was good or bad. No matter what the outcome is, it has no right to choose. When I saw the clouds at this time, although they all belonged to the owner, I was still afraid of the clouds. Yuntuan raised his little paw and slapped Ruan Tuanzi accurately. Xuanhuan didn't dare to resist. Besides, he couldn't resist. He was immediately patted into a round cake. Yuntuan's eyes lit up, as if he had found a fun toy, and he started playing with it endlessly. The soft dumplings who did not dare to resist were patted back and forth by the clouds and made into various shapes. Not only did the soft dumplings not dare to hide, they also cooperated to form the shapes that the clouds wanted to see. They completely became the toys of the clouds. Fortunately, it was smart and made the cloud happy. After having enough fun, it finally let it go. The soft dumpling ran away quickly. It wanted to stay away from this hairy and evil little thing. It wanted to see how big the owner's space was. It liked the smell here when it first came in. No one noticed that the aura that Xuanhuan had been emitting since entering filled the space and quietly changed the aura in the space. At this time, Xianxia was listening to Zetian telling him about the situation he had found. Master, it's not that there are no monsters and spirit beasts in the Death Mountains, but all the spirit beasts and monster beasts have gone to the foot of a mountain in the center. That mountain is not very high, but it has 7 peaks, and the 7 peaks are like the 7 pillars stood abruptly. There were lush trees on the mountain, and there were all kinds of rare plants, but there were no weeds on the 7 peaks. All the monsters and spiritual beasts were prostrate at the foot of the mountain, motionless. Except for the sound of the walking of the monsters and spiritual beasts that had just arrived, there was no other sound. Even when I passed by, those monsters and spiritual beasts didn't pay attention at all, and they still prostrate themselves on the ground, feeling very pious. I even kicked the nearby monster, but it didn't move. I wanted to inquire about the situation, but no monster or spirit beast responded to me. Later, I found a monster plant and got some information. What's the news? Xianxia asked. They call that mountain the Holy Mountain. Yesterday morning, the Holy Mountain trembled, and then it emitted a smell. This smell is very attractive to monsters and spiritual beasts, but it has no attraction to plants. They don't even smell anything. This happens from time to time, about once every few years. Every time these monsters and spiritual beasts come here and crawl like this for 3 days and 3 nights. It's a great gain. My cultivation level will advance and I will be back to the original state in just 3 days. Although I am a divine plant, I can only be regarded as a spiritual plant and can't sense anything at all. I haven't sensed any power at all. The spiritual beasts absorb it. I don't know how they advanced, so I can only come back and tell the master first. Xianxia told Xuanhuan what Zetian had said. The two looked at each other and said in unison, "That's where the sacred mountain is." End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 307. Chapter 307 Unparalleled in the World. The place they were talking about was the place where more than 300 God-level practitioners died as recorded in historical records. How they knew it was because of the eye-catching signs, the 7 bare peaks. It is recorded in historical records that the place where more than 300 people died was a mountain with 7 bare peaks in the center of the Death Mountain. The place of death in the eyes of humans is called a sacred mountain by monsters and spiritual beasts. Obviously, the help there to monsters and spiritual beasts is not that great. It can be named after a god, and so many monsters and spiritual beasts can surrender and receive power in a worshipping posture. This shows how powerful the power emanating from the sacred mountain is. The most important thing is that this kind of power plant cannot sense and will not benefit from it. It is really evil. So can human monks feel it, and will it also be helpful to human monks? Both of them understand formations, so they also know some Kimandungia. The 7 peaks are obviously a formation. Without seeing it with your own eyes, you don't know whether it is man-made or natural. Xuanhuan looked at Xianxia's shining eyes and said helplessly, "We can't go there with our current strength." Xianxia's big almond-shaped eyes flashed, maybe some high-level formation, a rare opportunity. That's not possible, we can't risk our lives, Ji Zhong refused sternly. He understood that Yan Xiangluo was interested in the Seven Peaks, and he was also very interested, but he was more rational. In a place where more than 300 powerful men with god-level cultivation died, 2 of them with sect-level cultivation, can you still come back alive? How much luck it takes. Yan Xiangluo sighed. She knew that Ji Zhong's decision was right, but he didn't know that he had Pangu space to rely on. She actually knew very well that even if there was Pangu space, it would still be very dangerous to rely on it. Okay, I won't go if I don't want to go, Yan Xiangluo spread her hands and said. Ji Zhong did not relax because of her words. The main purpose of their coming in was to find a flying spirit beast or a demon beast to use as a mount. But now all the demon beasts and spirit beasts have gone to the sacred mountain, whether they want to find a flying spirit beast or a demon beast to ride on. It is impossible to use monsters and spiritual beasts as mounts, or to fight with monsters and spiritual beasts to gain experience. Then they stayed in the Death Mountain for 3 days, which was actually meaningless at all. Otherwise, they should wait inside for 3 days. After 3 days, all the monsters and spirit beasts will return to normal, and they will then look for opportunities to find flying monsters or spirit beasts. Otherwise, just leave and stay away from this dangerous place completely. But he was unwilling to do so. Then what should we do next? Yan Xiangluo asked. Ji Zhong raised his eyes to look at the night sky and made a decision. Wait. Yan Xiangluo knew what he meant, which was to wait until all the monsters and spiritual beasts returned to normal behavior before looking for flying mounts and training. I just don't know what the strength of the monsters and spiritual beasts will be after they are promoted, and whether they can successfully find mounts. Then you continue to absorb the power of the soft dumplings. Yan Xiangluo didn't waste any time, took out the soft dumplings and threw them to Ji Zhong. Ji Zhong caught the soft dumpling and said, "Are you going to call it soft dumpling?" The soft dumpling who was wandering in the space came out again. He was stunned for a moment. When he saw that he was in Ji Zhong's hands again, he continued to act good. Yan Xiangluo glanced at the soft dumplings. There really was no good name for the soft dumplings, so she asked Ji Zhong, "How about you give it a name?" Ji Zhong raised his eyes. This girl was too lazy to think of a name. He could pick one up. Let me think about it. Seeing that Ji Zhong agreed, Yan Xiangluo was curious about what he would name the soft dumpling. After a moment, Ji Zhong said, "Its ability is to nourish and purify spiritual roots, and it is also a spiritual root that has been cultivated for a long time. It is probably the only spiritual root that can survive without the body and possess such unique power. Whether its existence or its ability can be said to be unparalleled in the world, how about calling it unparalleled?" Yan Xiangluo's eyes suddenly lit up. "Okay, let's call it Xuanhuan. This name is too appropriate." Ji Zhong saw that she liked him and smiled. "I don't know if Xuanhuan will get closer in the future and whether he can transform." The soft dumpling in Ji Zhong's hand, no, now it has a name, it's called Xuanhuan, which means unparalleled in the world. Xuanhuan suddenly realized that Ji Zhong was not so scary anymore, and actually gave it such a sweet name. Ji Zhong, the image in Xuanhuan's mind instantly grew taller. At the same time, he also had a new goal because of his words. Since he has been practicing for such a long time and has not developed any other skills that can be used for fighting, he might as well try practicing transformation. If he can transform into a human form, then there is no need to do this. Being treated as a toy by Xuanhuan. It no longer wants to be played around with by the clouds. Moreover, now that it has a master, and the master still has such a powerful Pangu space, it no longer worries about safety issues, and it doesn't care so much about whether it can develop the ability to fight. Didn't you notice that Xuanhuan and Zetian are also very weak in combat, but they are equally liked by their masters? Yan Xiangluo has a contract with Xuanhuan, so she is naturally aware of its thoughts. She feels that Xuanhuan is indeed a very smart spiritual creature and knows what choices are best for it. And you won't feel depressed because of what you can't get. On the contrary, you will be excited about what you can do. With this kind of mentality, anyone can live a happy life. This is the expression of contentment. Wu Shuang would be very cute if he could transform Yanxiang Luo encouraged. Since it is your own spiritual creature, you should pamper it. Happiness is what everyone and spiritual creatures need. Yet although Ji Zhozhong only said one word, he agreed with what Yanxiang Luo said. Wushuan's body is crystal clear. He can be said to be the cleanest spiritual creature in the world. If he can transform, he must be an extremely clean person. Son. Wushuan feels even more beautiful. Look, the master thinks that he will be very cute after transforming, so he should work hard to practice transforming. Ji Zhozhong felt that the Wushuan aura in his hand had changed, and seemed to be more peaceful. If he hadn't looked at it in his hand, he wouldn't have sensed its existence, but it had not forgotten to release its aura to himself. Have you started practicing? No wonder it can hide even now without being discovered by those people. This concealment ability is indeed very strong. Ji Zhozhong closed his eyes and continued to absorb the spiritual energy released by Wushuan. Yanxiang Luo saw that Ji Zhozhong had started practicing again, so she took out the book and started reading it. Xu Yilu was left to her by her parents. The medical skills and pharmacology she learned in another life were combined with the medical skills in Xu Yilu to achieve her current medical skills. Later, she learned about the origin of Xu Yilu from Master Qin He. At that time, she just heard about it, but after reading the higher continental historical records, she realized how powerful Master Xu Yi really was. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 308. Chapter 308 Treat everyone equally. Shuyi Master Sima Qingyun is a master of alchemy, medicine, and poison that no one in the higher continent can surpass. In other words, he has practiced alchemy, medicine, and poison at the same time to a height that is unattainable in the eyes of the world. Yanxiang Luo was very curious as to why such a powerful person's book had fallen into the lower continent and into the hands of his parents. Yanxiang Luo opened the book. The first part was what she had read and studied in the lower continent, about 1/3 of it, and the last 2/3 was the part that she couldn't open. Yanxiang Luo took a deep breath before turning over the remaining 2/3. As she expected, she turned over easily. As expected, you need to go to a higher continent to learn it. The first part of Xu Yilu she had read was about medical skills, and the latter part she thought was about elixir refining and poison skills, but when she opened it and saw it, she realized that the medical skills in the first part were only superficial, and the more difficult ones started from here. Medical skills. She was not in a hurry to learn these medical skills, but continued to flip through the pages to see if she could read all the books. Turning over page after page until the last page, Yanxiang Luo confirmed that Xu Yilu could only be read in its entirety in the higher continent. Although she did not read the contents carefully, she also understood that the fact that the latter part could not be read in lower continents probably had something to do with the high level of alchemy inside. A book in Yulu made Yanxiang Luo realize that Master Xu Yi should be a person with a broad mind. He set the book of clothes records so that people from the lower continent and the higher continent can read it. This means that he has no intention of hiding anything. He will not be biased or look down on you because you are from the lower continent. He is learning his medical skills. In alchemy and poisoning, everyone is treated equally. As long as you have talent, you can learn it. In the lower continent, Xiang Luo's alchemy is already at the highest level. Even if she is allowed to see a higher level of alchemy, she will not be able to refine it because some medicinal materials are not available. This will also affect her state of mind, which is not good for her. Improvement of alchemy achievements in the future. This is also the main reason why Shi Master divided a book into two parts. He was very thoughtful. Since you can read them all, it means you can learn them all. Yan Xiangluo is very interested in medical skills, so she has no intention of skipping medical skills to learn alchemy and poison. Decided to learn medical skills well first. After all, medical skills are not something you can master just by looking at them. You have to practice them according to the actual situation to improve your medical skills. So she first understood the medical skills and memorized them in her mind, so that she could practice them directly when she got the chance. While Ji Zhozhong was absorbing the Wushuan spiritual energy, Yan Xiangluo was quietly studying medical skills. After she had read all the medical skills, a feeling of enlightenment suddenly emerged. She has always been proud of her superb medical talent. Only after seeing this part of her medical skills did she realize how narrow-minded her thoughts are. The essence of medical skills is not to seek solutions blindly, but to restore them. This kind of medical skill is particularly suitable in this fantasy world. You have to know that ordinary people love to get sick. As long as a monk is rarely sick in his life, he is often injured. However, as long as a monk is sick, it must be incomparable to ordinary people's illness. If they want to be cured, the method of treatment is different from that of ordinary people. If we describe the medical skills in Shiyulu accurately, the former part is suitable for treating ordinary people, and the latter part is suitable for treating various difficult and complicated diseases of monks. Perhaps you will think that this is not absolute. Didn't Yan Xiangluo use the medical skills in the previous part to cure Ji Zhozhong's fetal poison? Ji Zhozhong's fetal poison was brought from his mother's womb. At that time, he was just a fetus and not a monk. Therefore, the fetal poison in him can be regarded as a disease suffered by ordinary people. In the later stage, it was because he became a monk and started practicing so that he could maintain his life and grow up. If he had not awakened his spiritual roots and could not cultivate, he would have died long ago. Yan Xiangluo studied medical skills eagerly, and Xu Yilu seemed to open a door to powerful medical skills in front of her eyes. One day and one night passed. Ji Zhozhong watched as his already clear and transparent spiritual roots stopped absorbing Wushuan's spiritual energy. He discovered that although Wushuan's spiritual energy could nourish and purify spiritual roots, the maximum limit was to nourish the spiritual roots into the purity of Wushuan's body. No wonder Yan Xiangluo told him to nourish his spiritual roots until they were as clear as Wushuan's body. Although it can only have the same purity as Wushuan's body, this is a spiritual root that monks can only find and cannot find. Even those who are peerless geniuses have mixed spiritual roots. Ji Zhozhong could predict how fast his cultivation would advance. Before, he didn't have the confidence to go to the Ji family's inheritance and wanted to experience it while going. Now he is not worried at all that he can't accept the Ji family's inheritance. Looking at Wushuan in his hand, he saw that its aura was still calm, and it was obviously still practicing. It could be seen that Wushuan was also looking forward to the transformation. Fen Yan raised her eyes and saw that Yan Xiangluo was holding a book and reading, having forgotten the surrounding environment. Ji Zhozhong glanced at the content in the book. It was about medical skills. No wonder she was so serious. Withdrawing his gaze, he stopped absorbing Wushuan's spiritual energy, and Wushuan stopped releasing his spiritual energy. Obviously, although it was practicing, it was very aware of the surrounding situation. Holding Wushuan in hand, Ji Zhozhong stood up and looked into the distance. He released his spiritual consciousness and sensed the aura in the Death Mountains. He still did not sense the aura of the monsters or spiritual beasts. 2 days have passed. After today, the weirdness in the sacred mountain will end. Ji Zhozhong narrowed his eyes. Although he prevented the fragrance from falling, he also wanted to take a look. There is no formation mage who is not interested in such a magical formation, but reason has overcome curiosity. Let's wait until the strength rises to above the level. Yan Xiangluo was still studying medical skills. He took out Yan Xiangluo's formation disc and continued to study the formation disc. He promised to refine a higher level formation disc for her, and he would do it. They were both immersed in their studies. It was almost noon when the ground suddenly shook. Yan Xiangluo and Zhizhong stood up at the same time. After looking at each other, they released their spiritual senses to investigate. Zhizhong also broke the trap formation at the same time. As soon as their spiritual consciousness was released, Yan Xiangluo and Zhizhong looked at each other. The time has not come yet. What is going on? Why do they feel that the auras of the monsters and spiritual beasts in the Death Mountain are a bit violent? Jishan, why don't you find a demon to ask what's going on? Yan Xiangluo immediately called Jishan out of the Pangu space and asked him to inquire about the situation. Zhetian left in response, very quickly, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yan Xiangluo shouted, "Don't go too far. Come back if you can't find her. Safety comes first." End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 309. Chapter 309. Danger is coming. I know the master. Zhetian responded to her. Zhizhong also released Wuji and asked him to check the situation. Wuji was small and fast and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The two of them felt a little heavy while waiting for the news. They both felt that the tremors on the ground were getting stronger and stronger. But it was too late to leave the Death Mountains now. They had walked for more than a day to get to this place. No matter how fast they wanted to leave, they would not be able to get out in a short time. In about a quarter of an hour, the tremor was so intense that many nearby trees were knocked down. This was no longer a tremor, but an earthquake. The two of them ducked and dodged to avoid being hit by falling trees. Zhizhong said decisively, "Leave quickly and let Jishan and Wuji come back." Yan Xiangluo nodded, and immediately used her spiritual consciousness to communicate with Zhetian. "Zhetian, come back quickly." The voice that covered the sky sounded in her consciousness, "Master, it seems that we can't leave the Death Mountain now." "Why?" Yan Xiangluo asked with a serious look on his face. "Something happened to the Holy Mountain." All the monsters and spiritual beasts were furious and running around. The Holy Mountain was not trembling, but more like an earth dragon turning over. The tremors in our place were affected by the Holy Mountain. The situation continues to worsen, getting more and more serious. 3 of the 7 peaks on the mountain have fallen. There is a power emanating from the sacred mountain, which has trapped the entire Death Mountain. The situation in the Death Mountain is such that it is impossible to enter or get out. Zhetian had already rushed back when he communicated with Yan Xiangluo. At the same time, Zhizhong's spiritual beast Wuji also came back, and Zhizhong also learned about the situation in the sacred mountain. Jishan and Wuji were just inquiring, not seeing it with their own eyes, but Yan Xiangluo and Zhizhong had already imagined the situation in the sacred mountain. "We can't get out, what should we do?" Yan Xiangluo looked at Zhizhong and asked. Although the current situation was very bad, Zhizhong did not see a trace of fear in her eyes. On the contrary, there was a light of eagerness to try. Zhizhong was helpless. This girl had always wanted to visit the sacred mountain. "We didn't have the strength to explore the previous sacred mountain, and the current sacred mountain is even more difficult for us to inspect." Zhizhong interrupted her thoughts unceremoniously. Yan Xiangluo pouted, "The current situation in the Death Mountains is not equally dangerous wherever we are." Zhizhong never knew that she had such a strong curiosity. But what she said is right. They are in danger wherever they are in the Death Mountain, but the sacred mountain is definitely the most dangerous place. He shook his head firmly, "We must not go to the Holy Mountain unless we have no choice." Seeing his persistence, Yan Xianglou knew that she could not convince him, so she spread her hands and said, "Then we will wait here." At this time Jishan also came back and went directly into Pangu's space without any need for Yan Xianglou to say anything. Although it is a plant, it is afraid of being implicated in its life if the world collapses. Ji Zhong took her hand and left. "Let's go outside first. Wherever we go, the farther away from the sacred mountain, the less dangerous it should be." Yan Xianglou didn't resist, and let him pull her away from the death mountain. "Try to see if you can fly in the air," Ji Zhong said. As soon as Yan Xianglou finished speaking, she activated her spiritual power, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't fly in the air. Ji Zhong was the same. The two looked at each other and realized the seriousness of the matter. The power released by the sacred mountain was so terrifying that it actually restricted their flight in the air. Needless to say, they all speeded up in unison and rushed towards the outside of the forest. At this time, the earthquake had reached a level that made it impossible to walk normally. All the trees fell down, smashing and hitting each other, so that they had already become a disaster scene in front of them. Even if Yan Xianglou and Ji Zhong hid quickly, they were still a little embarrassed at this time. But things developed far beyond their imagination, and the ground beneath their feet began to collapse downwards. Ji Zhong picked up Yan Xianglou and jumped up on the fallen and broken trees to avoid being buried underneath. Yan Xianglou, who was held in her arms, looked at the situation in the Death Mountain. A dark light flashed across her almond-shaped eyes. It was obvious that something was wrong in the Death Mountain. She didn't know what happened to the Holy Mountain, but the cause must be the Holy Mountain. She patted Ji Zhong and said, "I still want to go to the Holy Mountain. I have a feeling that I will regret it if I don't go." Ji Zhong paused when he heard this, turned around decisively and said, "Then go." Seeing him like this, Yan Xianglou said it was a lie in her heart that she was not moved. After all, he had strongly opposed going to the Holy Mountain before. More than 300 people with God-level cultivation had died there, and those with sect-level cultivation almost came back alive. The chance was very small, but he decided to go with him because he would regret it if he didn't go. "I'll go by myself. You wait for me here." Yan Xianglou didn't want Ji Zhong to accompany her on the adventure. "Do you think I will leave you alone at this time?" Ji Zhong said with a somewhat unhappy voice. Yan Xianglou's eyes paused. If a person is willing to accompany you through life and death even though he knows that there is little hope of survival, can he be trusted? Her almond eyes flashed, and she whispered into his ear, "Trust me, we will be fine." Ji Zhong nodded and said, "I believe you. Now it's not a question of whether something happened." When she said she would regret it if she didn't go, Ji Zhong understood that the reason why the current situation in Xianxia Mountain should be related to her. Maybe there is an opportunity for her in the Holy Mountain, otherwise why the Death Mountain has always been normal, why would something like this happen when they came? He understands the coexistence of opportunity and danger. Since there is an opportunity for her here, he must help her get it. Although Yan Xianglou felt this way, she didn't know the exact direction of the sacred mountain. She didn't want to waste time, so she called Jishan to lead the way, and they quickly headed towards the sacred mountain. But the place they were in was far away from the sacred mountain, and it took them a day to go back and forth at such a fast speed. Now that they are unable to fly in the air, even at the fastest speed, it will take less than half a day to reach the location of the sacred mountain. And the closer they get to the sacred mountain, the worse the situation becomes. The violent monsters and spiritual beasts alone make it impossible for them to go at full speed. Fortunately, the violent monsters and spiritual beasts did not attack them. Even so, the speed of avoiding them was much slower. At this time, the monks in the nearby city had received news of the strange phenomena occurring in the Death Mountain. Countless monks used various means to rush to the Death Mountain. In less than half an hour, many monks had gathered outside the Death Mountain, with all kinds of cultivation levels. However, Without exception, they were all isolated from the outside. End of this chapter. The Fragrance Falls Ninefold. Author, Midday Sunday. Chapter 310. Chapter 310, Taking Advantage of Others. The entire mountain range seems to be wrapped by some force, isolating the Death Mountain range. Some people with God-level cultivation have sensed it, and it is definitely not a barrier, and the formation master is also sure it is not a formation. The news of the Death Mountains has now reached the Lord of the Twilight Continent. The Lord of the Twilight Continent is devoted to cultivation and rarely cares about these matters. However, more than 300 God-level cultivation masters were sacrificed in the Death Mountains and he did not take any of them. He couldn't even think about not paying attention to the treasure that came out. Only by seeing it with your own eyes can you know what is going on. If the baby is born again, it will definitely cause an uproar. Although he knew that he was also a God-level cultivator, and even though one of them had reached the 9th level of the God level, among the more than 300 people that year, there were nearly 100 people who were at the 9th level of the God level. Didn't they all also die? With his strength, he couldn't get the treasure at all, but with a sense of luck, he had to choose the owner of the treasure this time, and he happened to be the destined one. The Lord of the Late Continent came to the Death Mountains and his heart suddenly went cold. No matter how beautiful his thoughts were, it was useless. He could not enter the Death Mountains. The Lord of the Twilight Continent immediately ordered his people to check how many bounty hunters had entered the Death Mountains and whether anyone had also entered. Anyone who could be contacted quickly contacted them to find out what happened inside. At this time, Xianxia and Xuanhuan had no idea that there was more excitement outside the Death Mountain than inside them. Continue to avoid monsters and spiritual beasts and rush to the sacred mountain. Of course, they are not the only ones in the Death Mountains. There are also some bounty hunters who come in to complete tasks, some people who come to collect medicinal materials in order to find them, and animal trainers who come to find suitable spiritual beasts and monsters. They are all distributed in everywhere in the Death Mountain. They didn't dare to make any move but after encountering the spiritual beasts and demonic beasts going to the Holy Mountain. Now that the entire mountain range has been destroyed, they are only focused on running out to escape for their lives, and the purpose of coming in has long been forgotten. Two bounty hunters actually met Xuanhuan and Xianxia when they were escaping. Seeing that they were going in the direction of the Holy Mountain, they kindly reminded them not to go anywhere else, as that was the most dangerous part of the Death Mountain. Place. The two of them just thanked each other and continued towards the sacred mountain. The two bounty hunters looked at each other and shook their heads. What kind of inexperienced young man was this? He was so ignorant of where he wanted to go. People like them who often come into the Death Mountain did not dare to go there, even those who came closer. They didn't dare to go anywhere, but they actually went inside at this time. Isn't this just to die? Don't say anything. These two men look young at first glance. They are young and energetic and don't care about life and death. If you want to die, go ahead. They need to run away quickly. Xianxia was still dressed as a man, so what they saw were two young men. After Xianxia and Xuanhuan met these two people, they never met anyone else. Mainly because they were walking in an unusual direction and no one dared to come. At this time, there were no monsters or spiritual beasts on the road they were walking on. It should be said that there were no living monsters or spiritual beasts. Crazy and irritable monsters and spiritual beasts are running around. The sacred place where they gain strength has now become a place of execution for slaughtering them, so even those who are raging and irritable know how to escape from here. There are many corpses of monsters and spiritual beasts on the ground. It is obvious that they were unlucky and could not escape, or they were not strong enough to escape. Xianxia looked at so many high-level monsters and spiritual beasts, took out the Junzi sword, and dug out the monster elixirs and spiritual beasts' inner elixirs while walking. These two things are very precious, Each one is worth a lot of money. Demonic elixirs and inner elixirs are more precious cultivation resources than spirit stones. However, the demon elixirs of demonic beasts can only be used by monsters, while the inner elixirs of spiritual beasts can be used by both demonic beasts and spiritual beasts. Humans cannot absorb the power in demon elixirs, but humans can absorb the inner elixirs of spiritual beasts if they have the same attributes. The demon elixir and inner elixir also have another function: they are excellent materials for refining weapons. Both demon elixirs and inner elixirs have attributes, such as gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Any attribute can be added to the refined object. For example, if a cup is refined with the addition of fire demon elixir or inner elixir, it will have the effect of warming liquid. Any liquid poured into the cup will be naturally heated by the cup. You don't have to boil hot water to drink tea with this cup, which is very convenient. If a flower pot is refined with wood or earth element demon elixir or inner elixir, any plant or flower planted in this flower pot can easily survive, with luxuriant leaves and bright flowers. If the refined weapon is added with gold demon elixir or inner elixir, the combat effectiveness will be increased several times. Hence, whether it is a demon elixir or an inner elixir, it is a refining material that a refining master will never reject. There are also animal trainers and some people who have contracts with monsters and spiritual beasts. They will also buy demon elixirs and inner elixirs to raise their own monsters and spiritual beasts. They can quickly improve their cultivation. After all, they are their own contracted beasts, and the stronger they become, the more powerful they are. The stronger, the greater the help. Therefore, the higher the level of cultivation of monsters and spiritual beasts, the more valuable the demon elixir and inner elixir are. There are no low-level monsters and spirit beasts in the Death Mountains, and the monster pills and spiritual pills of anyone are valuable. Normally, hunting one is considered lucky. Now there are so many high-level monsters and spiritual beasts waiting for her to dig up demon elixirs and inner elixirs without hunting. How could Yu Xianglou miss this, which is equivalent to picking up demon elixirs and inner elixirs? Dan's chance. Ji Kong was speechless. At this time, the girl had not forgotten to take advantage of her. He had no choice but to dislike her, so Ji Hong accepted his fate and started digging for demon elixirs and inner elixirs. If anyone saw the two of them at this time, they would definitely not think that they were going to the sacred mountain to seek death. Instead, they looked like they were out for fun. At this time, the people who were arranged by the Lord of the Twilight Continent to investigate outside the Death Mountain came back. Lord, all the bounty hunters in the Death Mountains are unable to be contacted. Some people who went in for training and animal trainers to collect medicines also said that their families could not contact them. The sound transmission stone seemed to be isolated. It's the same, there's no breath at all. The Lord of the Twilight Continent looked ugly. The Death Mountain was completely isolated. To know what was going on inside, we could only wait for the isolation force to be removed or disappear, and ask the people inside who could come out alive. But by then everything had settled, and what he was most worried about was that the treasures in the Death Mountains would be taken away. And it's not certain whether the people inside can come out alive. After all, people with God-level cultivation died inside. Since he can't go in, the people inside will definitely not be able to come out. No matter whether the people inside have a chance to come out, he can't give up any chance to understand the situation inside, let alone let the treasure be taken away. End of this chapter.